Well, hello everybody. I am so excited to hop back on in here and continue our 5-part video series on the anxious-avoidant trap. And so, have you ever thought to yourself, I know this relationship is unhealthy, but I can't leave this person. Why am I so afraid of being alone? I mean, this is probably the best I could do. I just know that there's so much potential here. Sometimes we're so good together. If only my partner could just kind of get with the program and stop being so afraid of love, everything would just be fine. I know if I stay strong and I love them hard enough, then they'll come around. No one else could love them as unconditionally as I do. Or perhaps on the other hand, you've felt, I'm attracted to my partner and I think that I love them, but anytime we get close, I start to feel kind of suffocated and like they're trying to control me. And then they start telling me that they'll be there for me no matter what. And it only makes me feel even more bored. It lessens my attraction to them. It makes me think I'm just going to walk all over them. And this is just not a good fit for me. I also feel like I just need someone who has more of an edge, someone that is a challenge. They really, my partner, they really deserve someone better, someone who can return the kind of selflessness that they keep demonstrating to me. They're just going to end up disappointed in the end. And honestly, I'd be doing them a favor to just bow out now. I'm not cut out for relationships like this. Now, it may be that perhaps you've harbored both of these sentiments to some degree at one time or another. And to my mind, these sentiments really illustrate the two extreme ends of a spectrum of ambivalence, right? Which is the context of an interpersonal romantic relationship that we are defining as the anxious-avoidant trap in this 5-part video series. And so if you don't know me, my name is Brianna McWilliam. I'm an author, educator, Reiki practitioner, and creative arts therapist. I've been in the field for over 13 years now, and I am just wild and passionate about attachment theory, but specifically psycho-spiritual approaches using creative arts therapies, interventions, and body-based interventions in working with attachment issues. Now, in this 5-part series, we're exploring the phenomenon of the anxious-avoidant trap. And I'm sharing with you in this series some of the content that is explored both in my self-directed online course curriculum, as well as in a 6-month live group coaching program that we will be starting in November. So I'm going to tell you more about that at the end of this video, but for right now, let's dive into the next part of our series. Now, in our first video, we explored some underlying dynamics of the anxious-avoidant trap as a general introduction. And I basically explained to you that while some people think of this as a case of opposites attract, I really view it as a case of like sees like. And so if you missed the first video, I invite you to check it out on my blog. There's a link to that in the caption of this video. Okay. Now today, in our second video, we're going to go over 6 signs of the anxious-avoidant trap. We're going to, on day 3, we're going to go over 4 neurochemicals that feed the anxious-avoidant trap. Okay. On day 4, we're going to take a look at the role of fantasy and avoidance in the anxious-avoidant trap. And then on day 5, we're going to look at 3 ways anxious and avoidant partners push each other away. All right. And so without any further ado, let's just dive into 6 signs of the anxious-avoidant trap. Okay. Now, when couples disagree about the degree of closeness and intimacy that they each want in a relationship, it usually, and at least eventually, tends to dominate all aspects of the relationship, right? So research on attachment has repeatedly shown that there are high levels of dissatisfaction and upset between individuals that have this kind of avoidant attachment style being magnetized to the anxious attachment style. So I refer to this as rolling stones and open hearts, because I believe that language plays a huge role in how we construct our realities. Okay, and a lot of times when we step into the realms of psychology or psychoanalysis, the labels assigned to these things are actually detrimental in terms of we set out to fulfill these predestined things that these labels set out for us. So I try to use language that is a bit gentler and gives us a little more freedom in determining our own destinies, right? Now, in their book Attached by Heller and Levine, a very popular book, I highly recommend reading it if you haven't, they also refer to the anxious-avoidant trap as being something that you fall into without very much awareness, and then once you're caught, it's nearly impossible to get out of it. Okay, and so let's talk a little bit about 6 signs of what that might be. Okay, so the first one is an emotional token economy. So both insecure attachment styles avoidance, which I'm going to refer to as rolling stone attachment style, and anxious attachment style, which I'm going to refer to as an open heart attachment style, both are preoccupied with sort of deriving a precarious sense of security through controlling their partner or the external conditions that impact the relationship. And that extends to controlling the thoughts, feelings, and or behaviors of their partners. So for example, anxious partners tend to implement what are called protest behaviors to try to establish or reestablish connection in an insecure relationship. And that might include excessive contact followed by sort of a punitive withdrawal, okay? Keeping score in the relationship or acting hostile. Also various forms of emotional manipulation, okay? If you want to learn more about what I have to say about that, I invite you to check out my video on that called 4 Protest Behaviors, How the Anxious Partner Sends Mixed Signals in Relationships. And you can catch that on YouTube or on my blog. Now, for avoidant partners, on the other hand, they tend to exert a sense of control by practicing detachment and using deactivating strategies. Now, this might include verbally expressing an avoidance of commitment, but then acting as if you are committed, or verbally expressing a desire to commit, but then acting uncommitted, okay? They may focus on the flaws in their partner the closer they get to that partner. They might pine for the one that got away to avoid emotional intimacy in the current relationship that they're having, okay? And they may be hyper or hyposexual. And again, if you want to learn more about what I have to say about that, you can check out my video on breadcrumbing demystified 5 ways avoidant partners send mixed signals in relationships. Okay, again, that's on my YouTube channel or on my blog. There should be a link to my blog in the caption of this video. Now, both partners implement these strategies in a way that essentially creates like tokens of power in the relationship. It's meant to determine who has more emotional control in the economy of the relationship, okay? Now, the second thing is there's a sense of stable instability about the relationship. You know, it may last for a very long time, years even. It might even be a marriage, but there's an element of uncertainty that still persists. So you may be together on the surface of things in name or in label, but the emotional and mental connection just isn't there. So on the other hand, you might have extreme highs and extreme lows that are reinforced by intermittent acts of intimacy. And those are usually followed by a withdrawal or some kind of bout of self-sabotage, okay? Which leads me to my third sign, which is pointless fighting, okay? So you might feel that you're constantly fighting about things that you just should not be fighting about at all. The arguments could be centered around something really concrete and seemingly unimportant. But really what it is it's a metaphor for the level of intimacy or the lack thereof between you in the relationship. So for example, you might there might be an irritance around ignoring the other partner's request for rolling the tube of toothpaste a certain way. And then all of a sudden there's a huge blow up and it turns into this giant argument that is really about feeling as if your partner doesn't have any regard for your feelings whatsoever, okay? Now, the fourth thing is that you may be perceived as the enemy. So if you are the anxious partner, frequently you'll find that the closer you get to your partner, sometimes the worse you're treated. And this is because attachment wounds stem back to an earlier phase of childhood when we tend to see the world as good or bad, law-abiding or law-breaking. Okay, and this is true for both attachment styles. Now, in our partnerships, that kind of emotional reasoning gets stimulated, and then we project that early good-bad way of sorting things onto our partners. So if our partners are nice to us, they are good, and we must be doing good things. If our partners are mean to us, then either they are bad and intend to hurt us, or we did something to deserve it, and we have to find a way to make it right, okay? Now, in the case of the anxious person or the open heart, the more connected that you become to an avoidant partner or a rolling stone, the more they will start to project their own needy parts that they dislike and reject in themselves onto you. But they will, and sometimes, often that stimulates the need to reject it. But they're also still attracted to you, and that's for the same reason, because you cannot fully reject yourself, can you? And usually the struggle is learning how to love yourself, even when you've been taught to reject those parts of yourself, okay? Now, if you are the rolling stone in this relationship, you'll find that the closer you get to your partner, the more that they will rely on you for their happiness and their satisfaction, to stimulate and their own sense of goodness, to prove to them their own sense of rightness about themselves, their own deservedness of love. And that starts to feel like a really heavy burden. And that's because their partner really feels more comfortable and secure in a state of merger. Okay. Now, this is, to my mind, the paradox of the anxious avoidant trap. So the closer you become, the less you're actually able to see each other for who they really are, as opposed to your own self-projections. Okay. So fantasy plays a huge role in this, which we will discuss in a subsequent video. But as a result, when there is friction in the relationship, black and white thinking gets stimulated pretty instantly. And you tend to adopt the opinion that all the goodness that you perceived in your partner might have been a sham. And suddenly they're a malicious enemy intent on hurting you. Then you start fighting below the belt, and you're kind of unable to stop yourself from saying or doing things out of spite that you will later regret. Okay. Now, the fifth one is feeling trapped. Now, when you think about it, this is really more actually, it's for both of you. When you think about it rationally and logically, you know the relationship is not really the healthiest thing for you, but you're too connected, what I'm going to refer to as addicted, to the other person to leave. And so open hearts, people with anxious attachment style, tend to tell themselves, this is the love of my life. If I can't make it work with them, I'll never find any other person that makes me feel this way. Okay. And so then they trap themselves into something that they know is not working. Okay, because they feel like that's the absolute best they could ever do. Okay, now avoidant individuals tend to feel trapped by that kind of emotional dependency and what they consider to be the high and insatiable expectations of their open-hearted partners. Right? They start to feel like that restricts their freedom. Okay. And the last one, number 6, the roller coaster effect. Okay, now in the relationship, you never feel as if you're on an even keel. Remember we talked about that stable instability? Okay, every once in a while when the rolling stone gives or makes him or herself available to their open-hearted partner, the open-hearted partner's attachment system is sort of temporarily quieted. Okay, there's an achievement of that extreme sense of closeness, which is quite literally a high experienced in the same part of the brain as ingestive addictions. So they have this moment of deep intimacy and connection, because oftentimes individuals that have a rolling stone attachment are capable of this. Okay. But what happens is it kind of freaks them out. Right. So there'll be this moment of connection. The open heart starts to feel this high, like, oh, everything I imagined and fantasized and dreamed about and see how there is potential is possible. And then they're like, ooh, I'm all in. And then that freaks out the rolling stone partner, who's like, whoa, this has now become really overwhelming for me. It feels kind of like a loss of identity, or it starts to feel like, oh, now that my partner's got all these high expectations that I will never, ever possibly be able to live up to, I'm just going to disappoint them, so forth and so on. And that causes the rolling stone to withdraw or implement these deactivating strategies that we talked about, right? So then, or they may do something self-sabotaging, right? Which makes the open heart push them away instead. Okay. And so then, of course, in turn, that activates the open heart's activating strategies. And so up and down we go in this sort of endless cycle and roller coaster, right? And so knowing what these 6 signs are really intended to help you to understand what the anxious avoidant trap looks like, because that's really a powerful step in putting your relationship and your feeling states into context. Okay. It can help you develop insight as well as sort of spaciousness around your internal feeling states and impulses and yearnings, which can sometimes feel so powerful. It's as if we have lost control of ourselves, right? But here's the thing. Insight can only get you so far, okay? Many individuals that struggle with attachment issues actually have tremendous insight into why they're struggling, in part because they're typically very analytical. All right. And that's because a lot of their energy has shot to their head. Okay. Their intellect and their fantasy life really helps them get by in the face of emotionally disappointing or uncomfortable experiences. Okay. But all that insight in the world over time, you find it doesn't really help you feel any differently. And you still find yourself caught in these same unhealthy patterns, being attracted to the same unhealthy partners. But if you can shift that in your body, you can start to make more discerning choices in love. And that's because our attachment system is a biological, behavioral, physical, visceral mechanism embedded in the same part of our brains as our active chemical addictions. Okay. And so in some, attachment experiences are bodily experiences, and our emotions are embodied as well. Okay. So the body is kind of like a warehouse. It stores all the historical, emotional, and psychic energy attached to every intense experience you've ever had. And those experiences carry with them a particular charge. Okay, so every experience you have is translated in your brain into an electrical impulse. And those electrical impulses carve new neural pathways in your brain, in your musculature, and in your organs over time, right? Body memory, cell memory, muscle memory. Okay, so understanding just how addictive the anxious avoidant trap can be on a chemical level, on a visceral chemical level, is useful in framing the healing process as one that is really similar to withdrawal from chemical addiction. Okay, so in our next video, we're going to explore 4 neurochemicals that feed the anxious avoidant trap. And for those of you that are just stumbling across this video or on attachment theory in general, and you find yourself wanting to learn more, I invite you to check out a free 60-minute training that I offer. It's called The Enlightened Lover, Attachment Styles Demystified in 60 Minutes. And so in this, when you walk away from this training, you will know much more deeply about the 4 different attachment styles and how they could be helping or hindering your love life. I will be giving you 8 mindful tips for working with insecure attachment, and also 1 guided visualization to stimulate your heart chakra and start healing insecure attachment. Okay. Now, this free training is a taste of my online course, Healing Attachment Wounds, which if you do attend that training, you will have a chance to purchase the course at a discount. Okay. So there should be a caption to attend that free training or a link to that in the caption of this video. Now, for all of you who have already purchased Healing Attachment Wounds, and you're searching for something or you're searching for something that's a little more intensive, and you'd like to have more personal contact with me and with a group of supportive individuals that are exploring the same topics as you and going through the same things as you are, I invite you to check out my 6-month course. It's called Hungry Love, From Ambivalence to Ascended Love in 6 months. Okay. And this is a live online group coaching program that reframes love addiction and love avoidance as a spiritual journey while transforming ambivalent feelings in only 6 months without having to endlessly talk about your feelings with no tangible result. Okay, so it also includes 6 self-directed lessons that has 6 didactic lectures similar to the one that you're witnessing today, 6 downloadable guided meditations, and 6 downloadable articles and PDFs that you complete as homework between the live calls. You also gain access to our private Facebook community exclusively for members of the Hungry Love group, okay, who've purchased admission to this course, who show up for the live calls, who've put their money where their mouth is, and they are really ready for transformations in their life, okay? And if that is something you're interested in, we are only accepting 12 participants into the group, so you want to make sure you submit your application ASAP. If you're interested in joining us, it's based on rolling enrollment. The first day of the group is November 1st. Last day to submit your application is October 25th. And the earlier you get your application in, the more likely you are to get an interview with me to find out if you're a good fit. So there are links to all that information in the caption of this video. And of course, I would love to hear in the comments below how you are taking in this information, what questions are being raised for you. And we are going to be I'm collecting all the questions that I'm seeing in the Facebook group and on my YouTube channel so that we can address them at the end of this series. So definitely make sure to post your questions in the comments below, and we will be tackling them. And so I look forward to seeing you in our next video when we talk about 4 neurochemicals that feed the anxious avoidant trap.